Hello everyone at Estevão Lives. If you like the video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.
Well, folks, I'm not famous for being a particularly optimistic sort. If you've ever listened to my show, I'd say morosity, depression, that might be a feeling that's come over you once in a while listening to my show where I describe what's going on in the country. But I can safely say I've never felt more optimistic about the United States than I do right now. And that is thanks to President Donald J. Trump. Now, one of the things that's sort of mysterious about President Trump is the fact that he isn't really an ideological conservative. Now, people like me, I grew up in the movement. I grew up reading Thomas Sowell and Friedrich Hayek and reading Russell Kirk. I don't think President Trump has ever sat around reading those people. I don't think he sits around at night and browses Edmund Burke or anything. And so the question is, why is it that this man, who's not truly an ideological conservative, is the most successful conservative president of my lifetime, bar none? It's a real question. And I think to understand that, the thing that we need to understand about President Trump is that more than anything else, and in this era, needed more than anything else, President Trump lives in the world of reality. President Trump has been slandered by the media as somebody who creates fictions of his own and sort of lives within those fictions and says a lot of words that don't always match up with the truth and all that kind of stuff. The reality is that President Trump, in his gut, lives in the real world. Which is why President Trump wins so often, because if you are going to win, you have to acknowledge reality, because reality always wins. And this is what makes President Trump conservative. Conservatism lines up really, really well with reality. The reason that President Trump won the last election cycle is because the Democratic Party, the left, completely disconnected themselves from reality in every possible way. They ran screaming with their hair on fire, their blue hair on fire, away from reality. President Trump embraces reality with both arms. When it comes to the world of economics, for example, President Trump only cares about success. He cares about economic dynamism. He cares about American businesses being able to build and succeed. And he understands that in order for all those things to happen, you have to free American business from the shackle of regulation and government. That you have to allow businesses to innovate. That you have to allow people to rise and fall on their own merit. Meritocracy has to be valued more than, say, identity politics and DEI. President Trump knows that in his guts because he's a business person. President Trump has had to make payroll. Unlike literally every leader of the Democratic Party over the course of my lifetime, he is not a career politician, which means he's always been answerable to reality. And that means that when he unleashes another businessman, Elon Musk, inside the government and says, go in there with a meat axe and start taking out programs, that is what a businessman would do. If you came into a business as a business person and it was rife with waste, fraud, and abuse, you wouldn't sit around and run a commission on it. You would start firing people. You would go in and you start making changes. You'd start breaking things and moving quickly, and President Trump is doing precisely that. You can see business optimism in the country is skyrocketing specifically because of that. Meanwhile, the Democrats don't know what to do because they're...
He perfectly explains why Donald Trump continues to dominate American politics, and I couldn't agree more. Trump is not just another politician. He is a fighter who refuses to back down, and that's exactly why he wins time and time again. I admire how Ben Shapiro highlights Trump's ability to connect directly with the American people. Unlike traditional politicians who hide behind scripted speeches, Donald Trump speaks openly and honestly. He doesn't sugarcoat the truth, and that's what makes him so powerful. His ability to take the relentless attacks from the media and turn them into strength is something that no other politician can do.
Their cherished blue pipeline, which is what the federal government is. It is a permanent payment program for the left, the federal government. They have permanent institutions that exist outside the government. They take literally trillions of your taxpayer dollars, and then they funnel all that money out to their political allies inside and outside the government. And Donald Trump came in and he broke the pipeline. Why? Because he lives in the world of reality. When we're talking about foreign policy, President Trump lives in the world of reality. When President Trump looks at the situation in Ukraine, he doesn't say, well, you know what, we're not going to set an endpoint. We're not really going to set a goal. We're just going to wing it. We're just going to go along with this for years. He says, listen, here's the reality. The reality is that there is a grinding trench warfare situation in Ukraine. There is very little shot that Ukraine is going to be able to win back Donbass and Crimea. And we don't want Ukraine to actually fall to the Russians, and so we know what an off-ramp looks like. Now it's just a question of how do we get to that off-ramp. That is what a practical person does. That is a person who lives in reality. That's not a person who wants to speak airy-fairy nonsense and nostrums about democracy and tyranny. All that stuff sounds nice, but does it get the job done is the question that President Trump is always asking. Does it get the job done? When it comes to the Middle East, President Trump has completely broken the mold. The sort of ancient wisdom of the State Department, which has been wrong for 80 years in the Middle East, is that the only way that you actually achieve peace in the Middle East is to make the Palestinian issue front and center. President Trump in his first term totally turned that on his head. He ignored it, and peace broke out in the Middle East. President Trump has now thrown onto the table a solution with regard to the Gaza Strip that is breaking people's brains and also happens to be the only plausible solution anyone has proposed in about a century in this particular area. Because it turns out that when you have a population group that literally held today a celebration of dead babies in the Gaza Strip, babies they had murdered in the Gaza Strip, it turns out that a two-state solution in which one of those states is actually run by those people is a really bad idea. And President Trump knows that, and he says it, because he lives in the world of reality. And this is how you chalk up victories. When it comes to China, President Trump is a realist. He understands that China is globally an opponent of the United States, and that we need to stand up to Chinese predations, stealing our IP, buying American land, funneling fentanyl precursors through Mexico. He understands on immigration that a realistic nation cannot have an open border. You cannot have a welfare state and an open border and pretend that that's workable. President Trump understands that. Well, now, all of this sounds commonsensical to all of us, right? Because it is commonsensical. But in Washington, D.C., commonsensical is not the way things have been run. Instead, people have been so wedded not to victory, not to winning, not to achieving things, but to saying things properly in just the right way to get the right coverage in the New York Times or in the Wall Street Journal or in whatever media outlet they're pandering to, that they never actually think about what wins and what loses. And then there's the matter of the reality of our daily lives. President Trump understands that what most Americans want is not identity politics. What most Americans want is not some bizarre notion about androgyny where men can be women and women can be men, and that we are sort of free-floating sets of feelings existing within the meat suits that we wear around. President Trump understands basic things that the left has completely abandoned and that he was willing to say. Stuff that was uncontroversial, 5 minutes ago, like boys are not girls, right? Like these are controversial statements to make, but President Trump understands boys are not girls, such as perhaps men have a role to play that is different from women's role. That does not mean that women shouldn't be in the workplace, obviously, and it doesn't mean that men shouldn't help take care of the kids, but it does mean that men being masculine is a good thing, and it means that women being wives and mothers is a good thing too. And that no country that ignores these basic truths can survive and grow and thrive. President Trump acknowledges and knows that the things that most Americans want, whether they are Hispanics living down on the border of Texas or whether they're white Americans living up on the border of Canada, those things are basically the same. They want to be able to live in safety, free of crime, with prosperity, being able to hold down a job in a growing, innovative, dynamic economy. They want to be able to go to their church and worship God and share that with their community without the government getting in their way. These are all things that, again, sound so easy. They sound so easy. But the way that President Trump measures whether a thing is true or not is whether it works. And that is why he has been so unbelievably successful. Now, when it comes to us, what can we do? This does say something to the rest of us. I think that I talk for a living, right, which is a really fun way to make a living. But the reality is that people come to me all the time and say, how do I make a difference in politics? And obviously there are things that we all can do, right? I spent the last election cycle campaigning with a variety of Senate candidates and with President Trump. I went out and I did things, but the things that most of us can do, aside from all the normal political fighting that Steve was talking about earlier, which is really important, the thing that is most important is to live a reality-based life, to be a model to our children, to be a model to our community, to build the social fabric that actually makes this country work, to create the businesses that make the country function, to engage in everyday common virtue. Because the truth is, the country is not just built by President Trump. We love President Trump. He's doing an amazing job. He should continue to be healthy and well and continue to succeed day in and day out. We're all praying for him. Okay, but the country also runs because of the people who are doing the everyday things, whose names we don't know, right? You, people I know, all the people out there who are just living with their families and bringing up their kids in the correct fashion in a country that is growing and thriving, building those building blocks, taking those building blocks and actually making the country work on a day-to-day level. President Trump is clearing the field for you. He's clearing the field for me, right? The Republicans, I hope, are going to do that. But then it's our job to actually build. And that's what we should be focused on, not just on politics over the next 4 years or 8 years.
Shapiro is absolutely right when he says that the mainstream media and the establishment have no idea how to handle Trump. Every time they try to take him down, they only make him stronger. They don't realize that the more they attack him, the more his supporters rally behind him. It's incredible to see how he exposes the hypocrisy of the left and the weakness of career politicians who care more about their image than about real leadership. One of the things I respect most about Donald Trump is his commitment to real results. He doesn't just make empty promises, he delivers. Whether it's the economy, border security, or defending free speech, Trump stands by his principles and fights for what he believes in. That's what true leadership looks like. Ben Shapiro brilliantly points out how Trump understands the American people better than any other politician, and that's why his popularity continues to rise. Shapiro also emphasizes how Trump dominates the media, always staying one step ahead of his opponents. Even those who hate him can't stop talking about him, which proves just how influential he is. While the Democrats and the mainstream media keep making the same mistakes, Donald Trump continues to gain support because people see through the lies and manipulation. At the end of the day, Ben Shapiro is right. Trump wins because he refuses to be controlled by the system. He's not afraid to fight for what he believes in, and that's why millions of Americans support him. The more the left tries to silence him, the louder his voice becomes. That's the kind of leadership America needs. Strong, fearless, and always putting the people first. Donald Trump is a leader like no other, and I fully stand behind him.